So I'm Saira and I'm a landscape architect and I work in Bradford. And Richard, my colleague, we work together on projects throughout the district.
The phrase townscape heritage, nobody gets it. It means I do regeneration projects. Townscape heritage is a scheme that was run by the Lottery Fund.
But everybody in the team chips in and we all work very well together to deliver whatever it is that we need to in Bradford. So for those of you that don't know Bradford, we're a great northern city. We have a population of just over 500,000, great architecture, heritage, landscape, entrepreneurial community. But we have a really unhealthy population. Over 40% of our children are unhealthy and obese, and even our adults are inactive.
Yeah, there's a quote that often comes from some of our health care partners that actually, if you travel from some of our most deprived communities to some of our least deprived communities, now most deprived communities tend to be in the urban environment and our least deprived tend to be out in our rural wards. If you take a bus journey, your life expectancy increases 1 year for every mile that you travel on the bus. It's a fairly damning indictment of health inequalities in society, and in particular how that's reflected in Bradford.
So we want to create equitable green spaces, and we want to make sure that the whole district, we have that fairness and we've got good quality spaces. Now, 2/3 of Bradford are actually rural, so there's plenty of green space, but most of our population live in our urban areas. 40% live in those urban spaces, and that is where we've got the deprivation.
Yeah, so Bradford's a product of the Industrial Revolution. It was one of the quickest growing places in the UK, in England, during the 19th century. So 1780, a couple of thousand people living in 3 streets, a market once a month, pocket industries. A century later, in 1880, over 250,000 people, hundreds of mills, and the fabric of the city is shaped by that. Huge amounts of back-to-back terraces to accommodate all the mill workers, low-rise, high density, and Bradford was an economic powerhouse. It's kind of quoted by some of the historians of the time that the majority of global production of worsted, which is woolen fabric, came out of Bradford, just Bradford on its own. That meant that we were hugely important. So the Victorian parks movement, that public parks movement that came, was inspired by this concept of rational recreation that was developing as people were beginning to understand how the Industrial Revolution was shaping our cities. It was social reformers, so this is a period of the Great Reform Act, as well as Thomas Carlyle's Question of England question. They were beginning to ask, what is in the Industrial Revolution changing our cities? And they came up with this idea that rational recreation would be a good thing, that the wealthy and upper classes were leading wonderful lifestyles, so actually if the lower classes could engage in similar activities, they would be uplifted. And Robert Slaney was an MP who decided he would seek a select party to discuss what would be called public walks. And this is the beginning of our public parks movement. I do love some of the quotes on this. I'm not going to read them all out, but Slaney took a lot of representation, Bradford included, all across the UK, and came back with this viewpoint that if you actually got the lower classes to go and dress up in their Sunday best and go to a public park and do what the upper classes would do in their grand public spaces, that they would be uplifted. They wouldn't drop down to drinking and gambling and all the rest of it. It was a real kind of social reform that drove it. And in the first Public Health Acts, the power was given to municipal boroughs to actually create public parks. And the first public parks began. Derby Arboretum is commonly accepted to be the first true public park. Joseph Strutt was a local mill owner who put money up for its creation. So the first public parks were tended to be acts of philanthropy, and it wasn't really until the 1870s that I think the second lot of public health acts brought in the power for municipal boroughs to actually expend their own money on public parks. So a lot of early public parks tended to be acts of philanthropy, and Bradford's no different. It's Earth's first public park, Roberts Park, Lister Park, Peel Park. There were lots of Peel Parks around the UK. They were all given grants by the government because they were in remembrance of Robert Peel. But Bradford's first public park is Horton Park. This is Horton Park, and this is the archetypical image of what they expected Brashton recreation to be. Those children in there could be upper class children, they could be working class children from the mills, but they were coming to the park to recreate in a mannered and organised way. Well, if that's what the Victorians thought it were, how do our parks function in the 21st century?
So the way that we use our parks has totally changed. Our lives have totally changed as well. So we're very rich with our parks across the district, but the way that we use them today is totally different. And it's not about going out on a certain day or a certain occasion. In order to have healthy lives, we need to be able to lead those in our houses. But as soon as we walk out the front door, we need to have that environment that inspires us. I mean, William was talking about the health benefits earlier. It's all about health and well-being. It's how you feel in a place, feeling safe, feeling happy. So for us in Bradford, it's very much about working with our community, understanding our history and our heritage, and using that to sort of look at our green spaces. And it's not about just the green spaces, it's about how you get to those green spaces. So it's about connecting them, and it's about the people, it's about children, it's about everybody in our community, but also it's about insects, it's about the birds, it's about everybody. So we're not very particular about who we work with everybody, and we've got some really, really strong relationships, because working for a local authority, we're not very cash rich. So it's about partnership working. It's working with everybody out there, because the more partners you have working with you, the better the project, because you're thinking about different outputs and outcomes that different partners want. Now, here are just some of our partners. We couldn't fit them all on, but just a few of them. Quite often we start with very small budgets. Sometimes we actually start with no budget. But it's about working with people, working with communities, and seeing what we can do. People who approach us, we never say no. It's about how can we do something, and how can we do it, and how will we do it. Now, sometimes our journeys can take a bit of time, but you know, we're on this is a journey with our community that doesn't matter about the length of time. It's a will to do something and improve their environment. But it's not just our external relationships, it's actually the way that we need to work internally within organisations as well. It's about working together. It's about working with our communities, working with politicians, working with colleagues, because quite often what we find is that when we want to do something somewhere, there'll be colleagues in housing, there'll be colleagues in highways, planning. For us, it's from planning to delivery. Everybody can join us on that journey to deliver projects. It's also about working with our communities. Everything that we do is about our communities and working with them. And we work with them in different ways. It's a bottom-up approach, and when we say that, we really mean it. We're putting children at the heart of everything that we do, because they are our next generation, but also it's about health and well-being of children. Everybody cares about the health and well-being of children, and if you can create good spaces for children, they're actually great spaces for everybody.
I think if you actually go down the co-design and co-creation route as well, you develop agency within the community. They feel invested in the spaces that they're helping to develop and shape. Rather than it's something that's being done for them and provided for them, they feel that they're their spaces. They take ownership of them and really do engage in how to deliver them in the shape that they want and help us to maintain them.
Oh, sorry, that keeps moving.
No.
But it's also about asking them what they want, how they want to use spaces, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And being really creative about how you get that information and how you work with them. So With our partners, we have many workshops. We look at different ways to engage, you know, right from the beginning, different processes all the way through projects, but also who's not in the room. You know, quite often when we do engagements, we have an empty chair. Who's not in that room with us? Who do we need to engage with to make sure that we're creating inclusive environments?
And I think it's really important as well that you don't let the loudest person in the room dominate everything. Just because somebody's able to shout and articulate themselves very well doesn't mean to say that they're the brightest people, that they've got the best ideas. You've got to find a way to let everybody, including some of those who don't want to speak up at events, don't want to be the people who are leading the conversation.
But it's also about
find a way
fun,
to get them in it, but also making it fun. Nobody's going to turn up if it's hard work. If you make an event where you're asking people to help shape something fun and creative, they'll
Being
join
creative,
in.
having food, you know, we end up putting on weight with all the food, but also some of the groups that we're not engaging with. A lot of the work that we're doing is working with Make Space for Girls, making sure that their voice is heard as well. And then it's children, putting children at the heart of this work, making sure that we act early, change behaviours, look at communities, look at behaviours, look at cultural differences. And we found, I mean, you know, it really, I was quite shocked when I looked at some of the statistics that, you know, an Asian family, for example, on average spends 1.5 hours a week outside, whereas a typical English family might spend 6 hours. So it's looking at why that is and making it fun. You know, I want kids to get down and dirty and be jumping in puddles and having fun on the way to school. So these are just examples of some of the spaces that we created.
And I think we're very fortunate in Bradford. We have the Bradford Health Research Institute, who've been doing one of the biggest birth cohort studies in the world. So thousands of people, their childhood development is being followed and has been followed for over a decade, which means that rather than some of their subjective responses that might well be, well, we think it's this or we think that's that's shaping health. They're actually producing, no, we absolutely know because we got the data and it's so rich. But coming out of that has then been projects like Better Start, Better Place, which is looking at 0 to 3s and expectant mothers and how they're seeking childhood development and actually looking to activate our parks and get them out to play. And then there's the Jump project, which is Jonah's Move Play, which is looking at the teenage generations. And that's Sport England supported, I should say Better Places, Lottery Fund supported. And we, despite the fact that these are run by different agencies like Active Bradford and Better Start is run by a charity, the council, our team have embedded a project manager and landscape architect within that organisation to help them shape and develop their projects in a more productive way.
But when Bradford Health Research Institute, they've been going for over 20 years with the Born in Bradford cohort, but a lot of their work is research based. But now what they've started to do in the last 5 to 7 years is when they get funding, we put some capital aside, because you can research and research, but you need to actually implement and test and learn, which is what we're able to do with these projects. So just want to play a video for you. Would have been great to take you to Bradford, but we brought Bradford to you.
When we've got new housing being developed, we really want to see people thinking about how people live in the space around those homes. So can people stand out and meet their neighbours? Is there somewhere they can sit and chat? That helps to reduce social isolation.
Bradford's blessed with the amount of green space. The problem is the quality of this green space varies.
We are bringing together schools and community organisations and mosques and madrasas and other faith settings to co-design a local plan, to be involved in the development of green space, all to create a more active, healthy environment for our communities.
What's this park called?
Christina Park.
You come here every day?
Every obstacle every day and they're tired and everything.
This local housing stock would utilise this green space to benefit their health and well-being.
Well, it's about local communities and local people deciding for themselves how they can make themselves active and actually how we can support that by affecting strategy.
Whenever we develop a space, it's done in a co-design and a co-production way. Local communities do want ownership, they believe in the space, they believe in their own community.
This space here sat like that for nearly 20 years or so, and people used it as a dumping ground. I think we removed about 180 tons of rubbish from here. I live here, I live about 300 yards down the road. It's our community, our children, our friends that use this. So it's just about making our place a better place to be.
I was approached to help design and deliver this space. We looked at what their requirements were and created something that they could use in the next 5 to 10 years.
They were said they were creating a community garden with lots of animals, and I wanted to join in on it.
We looked at how they wanted to use this space. We worked with them, engaged with the community, had workshops and worked with the team here and designed something that they felt quite proud of. It's a little oasis in the middle of this housing area.
This is a novelty for local kids around here because there's no farms around here, there's no birds, there's no animals.
It was about coming together to try and make the park a safe environment for children, for families and young people to access.
It might just seem like a tiny thing, being in the park with your family, but it's not. It's a lot more than that. It's helping people's mental health, it's connecting people.
It was just a place where there was lots of community but needed a lot of work. And then to see it as it is now, all the hard work and all the investment that's gone in there, it makes me feel really proud.
Yeah, I like seeing how these things change and how people create projects to bring sort of kids together. You can give them opportunities to explore the wider world, explore things that they might not have access to previously.
And we call that kind of community-led culture. People are best placed to solve the problems that they have in their communities. This is a family example of that, where the communities come together with a range of partners to transform what was once a relic space.
It's about creating an environment that's healthier, and these little spaces contribute to that. It's about having a lovely place to live and work. It's looking at the whole environment, and hopefully over the next year we'll have more of these little pockets of green space opening up that are part of a bigger green infrastructure for Bradford.
Above all, it's going to make a huge difference to their health and well-being in this area. It's going to benefit these communities for years to come.
It's also an approach that we'd like to adopt in other parts of the district in finding solutions for those areas as well.
This regeneration is essential for long-term vitality and sustainability of the city, and will position the city for future growth and prosperity by improving its economic, social, environmental and cultural assets.
So for us, it's not just about retrofitting our existing infrastructure, but it's also about affecting policy. We work with planning colleagues quite closely and make sure that everything that we're learning, that we're implementing, that we actually direct it towards new developments as well. So one of the projects that we're working on at the moment, so as well as all the green spaces across the district, we had an opportunity through Transforming Cities to look at our city centre and look at health and well-being and putting that at the heart of regeneration, economic regeneration. And working with our highway engineers and transport fund, looking at the economic benefits of green infrastructure and the health benefits as well as climate change. So this is just outside our office, and this is a £44 million scheme that looks at the whole of the city centre. But it's basically a motorway going through the city centre, and that's what it looked like. This is what it's looking like at the moment.
Well, that was a couple of days ago after the office window.
And
a building site courtesy of Balfour Beatties.
And by January, February, it's going to look like that. I mean, this is once in a lifetime kind of like opportunity to actually create a totally different environment. And it was so important to us that we influenced and tried to push things. And it was hard work, but when you've got good examples that you can demonstrate across the district, we had to really, last 9 months, to really push, because one of the first things that obviously comes out is green infrastructure, because it's the last thing that goes into schemes. And it's just pushing and making sure that the vision that we've got and what we want, because our communities deserve this. So we work with, obviously, our community, and we really believe that there is hope and green spaces, and we want to really kind of have people value those green spaces.
I think that quote there has been utilised as part of Bradford's City of Culture. So Next year we're the UK City of Culture. We do hope you all take the opportunity to come and enjoy what we're putting on as well. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If you've not been to Bradford recently, it is changing. I'm trying to think how long I've been married. 35 years. 6 years ago, I took my fiancée to Bradford because she had relatives there. So I know what some of those sites used to look like many, many years ago. We haven't had a date in this department, to be fair, but there you go. That's a different story altogether, possibly. Right, any questions, please? No? Oh, yes, there's a question across here. Again, just name and where you're from.
Yeah, Gary Quilter, West Suffolk Council. Just, you may or may not know the answer to this, but I'm just interested with that scheme. Is the maintenance of that scheme and the funding of it built into it in any way?
We've built it in. The pushback was maintenance, the increased maintenance, but we worked out that the maintenance of the road scheme and the highway side of things, long term over a 10-year period, actually cost more than the scheme will cost the soft infrastructure. So we had to actually go away and do the maths, and we could demonstrate that the benefits we could prove the benefits, but also the business case, health and well-being, was so important for Bradford, and the benefits and the work that we're doing around creating this healthy city.
I think it's very typical in public sector organisations to compartmentalise budgets and say, well, green space has its budgets. If you create more green space, you've got to find more budget for it. But it's inevitable in creating green space that you're actually defunding something else. We're defunding a highways maintenance project. So you've got to look at holistically what the budgets are. Those are difficult conversations to have, but that's the level you've got to think of it at in order to justify at times how you're exchanging and moving budgets around to actually justify it.
But it's also building in, when you're actually designing a scheme, and the contractors building a 2 to 3 year maintenance plan as part of the capital works, and that's one way to do it, because the first 3 years are crucial. Once you've got established trees, yes, there's a maintenance, but you don't have loss of trees or replacements.
And I think also within projects that we look at, within the Horton Park project that we're developing, which began with some European funding, we've got some support from Natural England. We're in the early stages of a lottery fund bid. We built into that not only buying potentially new equipment that we will need to maintain the spaces if we adapt them to new uses. So for instance, if we're moving more towards meadow from mown grass and we need new equipment. So we're building commuted sums against revenue in the early stages, but also building that into those funding bids, the training opportunities, so that the staff are resourced, they're trained on the new equipment, so that the pain threshold that might be felt by services taking on adapted or new spaces is reduced.
One more question? Oh. We'll see how we go.
Hi, Maciej Koszybowski from MHCLG. You've mentioned the budgets as one of the obstacles, but I was wondering what other pushbacks you've experienced in sort of introducing the greening of the city centre in Bradford.
I think inevitably you get the retail sector and the business sector who are very much focused on the ease of their customers getting to that shop or to that office. So you've got to make the case very, very strongly. Where one of the drivers behind the Transforming Cities funding issue in Bradford is air quality. Bradford City Centre air quality did not meet the European air quality standards. We knew we had to change that. There has been a clean air zone. So effectively people were already on a journey of understanding we needed to change things. We couldn't just carry on in the same vein. But also it was then, once you've got people on that journey, and being creative in how you consult with them is a part of that, you can then push it at changing their ideas and their perceptions about what they might want to do. Again, one of the lottery funded projects, the European project that we're doing at Horton Park, is called Life Critical. That's challenging how we might put climate change mitigation adaptations into a park. Well, if you ask the community what they want to do in a park, they'll inevitably say they want better play equipment, or they want public toilets or a cafe. So getting them to engage with something like climate change mitigation is difficult. But because we were able to bring in additional money to actually have a different conversation and shape that moving forward, it's the same as Islington with the Future Parks Accelerator. Getting in that money gave Islington the opportunity to reset, have a different conversation and change direction. We're doing the same, but we're trying to do it on a project by project basis, every time trying to bring in a little bit of extra resource to allow us to do that creative engagement that gets everybody on the journey as to what the bigger picture needs to be.
But it is the education. We find that that's the citizen science. That's one of the reasons I think, for us working with young children is really good. But from the economic side and the businesses, sort of getting engaged with them much earlier in schemes and keeping them on that journey with us, but also being able to demonstrate examples elsewhere where that's happened and where success. A couple of years ago, I worked with Leggy Money, which was about economic regeneration. And we were able to demonstrate that green infrastructure was better for business. So when placemaking, when you have a nicer environment, people spend more time, that dwell time. And it's kind of taking them through that journey, even though we've been through it. Each time we're working. So, we have people calling us up all the time. The TCF scheme, the city centre scheme, is taking away traffic from the city centre, and a lot of the businesses weren't happy about it. But once we explained to them the benefits and gave them examples and, took them on case studies, we've taken colleagues to other cities to show them, to speak to colleagues, to speak to people about the benefits, because on that one-on-one conversation. So it's having good case studies. It's also looking at, working to legislation, using evidence. I mean, our business cases, we spend a lot of time on funding bids and writing. And what we do is we look at evidence. We look at what can we prove, how we can apply it to Bradford, and really kind of engaging with the community. And that sort of co-design side of it is really important. And people have started to work with us now, and sometimes we have to compromise. There's been occasions, for example, we did a townscape heritage scheme in the city centre, and we were trying to apply the flood mitigation biodiversity outputs because that's what the funding was. So we had to take away parking. They weren't very happy about it, but we had to spend a lot more time engaging, talking to them. But in the end, they could see the benefits, and it's about testing and learning. And I think what we say to people is, look, let us test it, let us do it. If it doesn't work, we can make change. It's permanent, but we can make change. We can look at things. So being able to do that helps.
One last question. There's a lady there with a hand up.
Hi, I'm Jo Pearce from Sheffield City Council. The video was amazing, and seeing that kind of project and that level of kind of gold standard community engagement is what we all want to be doing, and we probably have examples of that. Often the reality is you can't always do that to that level of, community-led engagement. So I guess the question is, how did you do that? Was it kind of with the voluntary sector, were they commissioned by yourselves to do that, or did you do it yourselves? But I sense from the people. The second part of the question was, now that you've raised the bar, how do you maintain that for other projects that you deliver?
It doesn't always have to cost a lot of money. Having people to work with. I often say that we invest in green space in Bradford, but we also invest in people. And investing in our community and working with them. I mean, some of the people that you saw in the video, they are now our champions. They are now working with us to do that work elsewhere. And some of it is voluntary, but we've created positions. So what we do as a team is we look at different ways that we can deliver things and different budgets. And sometimes there might be money for a particular output. It might not be something that we can do, but we can bring people in to work with us, and they can do that side of things. We can't do everything, but money. I'd like to say that money's not an object. In that, if you want to do something, you'll find a way to do it, and then you look for the money. You need the people. And that scheme, when we started that, it had no money. They'd been trying to deliver that for about 2 years and talking to various people and not having any money. And one of the things that we do, within the council, we're an income generating team. But what we do is we work with people who have no money as well. And we kind of offset and try and support, because for us, it's about creating, a healthier, greener district. And we can work on anything, because the priorities for the council is, better jobs, better economy, good transport links, happier people. Everything we do ticks all those boxes, so we should be doing it. And we find people within the council who think like we do, who want to work with us. And public health, for example, don't have capital. In Bradford, we find a way that they can give us money to be able to deliver projects. And it's very much about different people with small pots of money coming together to create a bigger pot.
Brilliant. Thanks so much indeed. And thanks so much
Thank you.
for that brilliant presentation. Thank you.